What's going on, everyone? Austin John Plays here, and today I'm going to be going over all 829 fusible objects, materials, and items in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. 829 is the complete number of items that are going to be materials from your inventory, things that are going to be dropping from enemies, as well as things that you just find around the world. While you're going around, piece of a Sky Island falls, you can fuse that. There are so many items inside of this game that are going to be changing the damage and the effects that your attacks have, and for this, I'm going to be using the Master Sword as a reference, because the Master Sword is okay as a weapon in my opinion, but it actually has a lot of versatility as far as other things that it can do. And with some consolidation, there is a total of 62 different effects that can be had. So the very first thing that I did is I decided that a whole bunch of objects that are going to be very similar, I'm just going to group them all together that are not going to have any discernible traits once fused. For example, there are 17 different types of logs from cutting different types of trees that after they're all fused with your weapon, they're going to appear and or act exactly the same. So because of that, I'm not going to go over all 17 of them, I'm just going to be going over anything notable. Thanks to Ecolat's Data Mine and a whole bunch of people have put in a lot of work, and there's going to be links down below if you want to see the original documentation on this in the original Excel sheet. There's going to be so many different types of damages that are going to be calculated, as well as visible damage, which on the Master Sword the damage is also going to be the visible damage. The max life of the weapon, that as we know the Master Sword's max life is 65, however, you're never going to be able to achieve that once the Master Sword has been restored. It's always going to be having a durability of 40. The damage of the weapon over its entire life, it's conditional damage, like if you have bone proficiency, and your DPS, damage per second. Items like the Ancient Blade, because they're going to be destroyed immediately, have the worst DPS at only 60. Now, while this calculation may be a little weird because of the max life not being fully achievable with the Master Sword under most circumstances, because of that, just take it as a proper order, not an exact calculation. And as you can tell, because this video is not 800 minutes long, I'm going to be grouping a lot of these things together, and also I'm going to just not talk about any things that are not really worthy about talking about. So first, we're going to be talking about the no frills category. These are going to be weapons, items, materials, and objects that you can fuse to weapons that are going to increase your damage, but that's about it. And there are hundreds of things that occupy this space, such as bright bloom seeds, tree branches, most pieces of guts, and most of the weapons as well. In fact, this also shows us the most powerful thing that you can fuse to your Master Sword, which is going to be the Silver Lionel Saberhorn, which is going to have the highest damage over the Master Sword's entire durability. Third is the Colgera Jaw, which is only obtainable after you defeat the Colgera rematches in the depths. Here you're going to be finding the Captain Construct 4 Horn, that while it is in the no frills category, it is a Zonai weapon. Because of that, if you were to attach it to a Zonai longsword or a Mighty Zonai sword, something like that, it does get a damage boost, but we're only using the Master Sword here as our base level. You're also going to be seeing the Bogoron Sword in here, and the Bogoron Sword has a durability of 60, which means that as soon as your Master Sword comes back and is fully recharged, if you then fuse it, your first 40 hits, while the Master Sword is still okay, are going to have the Bogoron Sword there, and then both are going to be destroyed at the same time. However, the Bogoron Sword had 20 more hits in it, so it's not a good idea for you to attach it. You're also going to be seeing the Scimitar of the Seven here. Anything that's going to be fused to it is going to be getting double the power. However, that does not apply when the Scimitar of the Seven is going to be fused to another weapon. Because of that, its damage output is not fantastic. You're also going to be finding things like the Fierce Deity Sword here, which has a durability of 35, meaning your first 35 hits, the Fierce Deity Sword is going to be part of the Master Sword, and then after that, it's going to be gone forever, and your last 5 hits, you would have to refuse something or not have anything fused at all. Next, I'm going to talk about a category I call Bad Plus. It's actually worse than bad. This is going to be any single bomb that you can put to any single weapon. Fusing bombs to shields is absolutely fantastic, as you're going to be able to shield and then do a whole bunch of recoil explosion, but on a weapon, you're mostly just going to hurt yourself. That includes bomb flowers, time bombs. Also, if you didn't know, there's 3 different types of bomb barrels that appear exactly the same. The only difference is the damage and explosion radius that they're going to be doing once they explode. The rocket is going to add 10 damage on there, but it's going to destroy the durability of whatever weapon that you're going to be having, and then it's also going to be chewing away at your battery. It's not a great thing to fuse to a weapon. Please don't do it. If you were to fuse it to a weapon that you could then throw, yes, I could see advantages of it. However, just swinging it, not great. Now we're getting into the useful and neat things, including the code Ancient Weapon, which applies only to the Ancient Blade. If you're unfamiliar, once you have the Ancient Blade attached to a weapon, the first enemy that you hit is going to be completely obliterated and destroyed from the map. I'm unsure, and I don't think this means that you defeated the enemy in regard to the experience that you gain internally, but the enemy's just gonna not be there anymore. It only lasts for 1 hit, and there are some enemies that cannot be teleported away, in which case they are just going to receive an additional 50 damage. This only lasts for 1 hit. Here is, in my opinion, one of the funnest things that you could possibly do. I looked in the game's code and I saw that there was an item that had code Beehive. Obviously that's the coarser bee honey, but it also had the code Rod. Now, if you take a ruby and you put that on a magic rod that has the code Rod, you're going to be shooting out fire. So what do you think happens when something has the code Rod and Beehive? Because if you go ahead and then attach a coarser Beehive to your Master Sword, anytime that you swing it, you are going to summon bees. And bees can be used to attack enemies, but if there's no enemies left, the bees are just going to go ahead and attack you. I bet you didn't know that you could just summon bees. I think that's pretty darn neat. You can only have 1 bee out at the same time. After the bee is defeated or despawns, then you can summon in more bees. And if you didn't know this existed either, then this video definitely deserves a like. Next up is going to be the bone category, which actually applies to quite a number of objects in the entire game. And if I go here and I sort by conditional damage over time, you're going to be seeing, as we already knew, the Molduga Jaw is going to be having the most conditional damage out of actually any single fusible item in the entire game, but I've already covered that and the math on how that works out. But what's really interesting here is this also has the code Shatter, which the code Shatter means that this is going to be considered a hammer, and it's going to be doing additional damage to any ore or ore-based enemies. But what's really interesting is Object Spiny Bone. You know, while you're walking over the Elden region, you see those little pieces of bone everywhere that you're just like, oh yeah, cool, that exists. Those are very strong. That's actually about half of the full damage that the Molduga Jaw will do over the Master Sword's entire lifetime. Even though it's only giving you an additional 7 damage, the fact that it's a bone is going to make whatever weapon that you have significantly stronger. That's what I was really interested to find out. As opposed to when we look at things like the Dragon Bone Bokobo, that's going to be giving you 6 additional damage and slightly increase your overall damage over life. And while the Moblin Arm does increase your damage to 58, it breaks after 5 hits, so also not too useful. The Gibdo Bone is the highest amount of damage output at 70, but because it only lasts for 1 hit, you have horrible DPS over life. Next is a category I call Bright, which is the Star Fragment, which if you go ahead and you fuse a Star Fragment to a weapon, it's gonna shoot out a little bit of light, and it's gonna bounce around. And that's all I can really say about it. This might be a cool thing while you're exploring the depths. Can I do a spin attack? Oh look, that shoots out 5. That's pretty. That's the only thing I'm gonna say about this. The next category is a category I like to call Cannon, because it's going to be for the cannon. The damage itself isn't actually that high because it's only calculating the damage of you making contact with the cannon sword to an enemy. However, as you could probably imagine, you're gonna shoot out cannonballs. And that's fun. You're gonna drain your battery so very quickly, but like, that brings me joy. Maybe because I'm an Aries. We have a category called Confuse, which is going to be the Muddle Bud. Anytime that it's going to be attached to a weapon, and then you go to attack something, they're going to have the Confuse trait. Like a lot of vegetables, fruits, and things like that, you can only use it once, so I personally think it's much better off on a shield. I also feel that way about the Puff Shroom, which is going to be a category I call Smoke. Now I want to talk about a trait that a lot of weapons have, which is called Expand. However, there is a specific flag in the game for Expand XL that defines that anytime that a Lizalfo tail is going to be fused to a weapon, it's going to be acting like a whip and hitting things further away. Now, the different levels of Lizalfo are going to be doing more damage, such as the black Lizalfo tail having more base damage overall, followed by the blue. Oh, sorry, silver was at the top, obviously. But all the elemental tails is a pretty neat thing to have. So a Fire Breath Lizalfo tail, when attached to my weapon, is going to be hitting enemies significantly further away than the furthest reach of two fused weapons. That's like the range of a spear on a spear, and it's still just a one-handed weapon, and it's doing fire damage to something that far away. And if you go ahead and do a spin attack, you're going to be doing a very wide circle of fire. If you go ahead and you attach an electric Lizalfo tail to any weapon that you're going to be able to do a spin attack like that with, you're going to be able to disarm and shock a whole bunch of enemies in your immediate surroundings very quickly. My personal favorite use for this is going to be a Fire Lizalfo tail to defeat Ice Lizalfos, and a Ice Lizalfo tail to defeat Fire Lizalfos, as one quick whip and they're going to be defeated. That brings us into our elemental damage that's going to be involving electric. Now, all of the elemental damage in this game actually has a few different tags inside of it. If we look right here, you're going to be seeing Chemical Explosion Attack and Chemical Attack Electric. And as you're going to see here, things like the Shock Emitter and Topaz are both Chemical Explosion Electric, but they are not going to be Chemical Attack Electric. And that has to do with what actually happens with the attack. As you can see here, anytime that I'm going to be attacking with this weapon, it's going to be shocking anything that I hit. However, we're not having a projectile released from the weapon like you would see with some other types of weapons here. Now, because the Topaz also has the flag Rod, it's going to be shooting out that electric ball afterward the same way that bees were shot out of the bee rod. So out of all the electric-based things that you could attach to your weapons, the most powerful is going to be the Gleeok Thunderhorn, followed by Ferocious. All of her bits, right there, that's going to be the power of all of her bits. And then it comes down to the electric Lizalfo horn. However, the Thunder Gleeok horn is the only single item in the game that has the code Chemical Electric INF. When you attack a Thunder Gleeok horn, it does not have a cooldown, meaning that you can infinitely, hence the INF, just keep doing electric-based attacks in your immediate vicinity, being very powerful. The largest drawback to the Thunder Gleeok horn, especially if you attach it to the Master Sword, is how small its actual reach is going to be for weapon-based damage, although its electricity is going to be significantly further. When looking at all of the fire-based items as well, it's going to be very similar. However, right after the Flame Gleeok horn is going to be the Igneo heart. After you defeat an Igneo, his heart is going to be falling to the ground, and that's going to be a fire category as well. However, its flags do not include Chemical Explosion Fire, only Chemical Attack Fire, meaning anything you make contact with will be on fire. Except for the Fire Fruit, Red Choo Choo Jelly, and Flame Emitter, all of these have the tag of Warm, meaning that if it's attached to a shield or a weapon, you're going to be one stage warmer. The Flame Gleeok horn does have the tag Infinite here as well, so you're going to be able to do infinite fire attacks with the Gleeok horn. On to an interesting category that's called Fan. That's exactly what it sounds like. It's Fan. And I did combine a bunch of these things together. As you can see, we have 17 different boards that are going to be here. That includes all the weathered versions of boards, all of the Addison stand boards, but the most powerful one by far is the Queen Gibdo wing, which is only obtainable during the rematches of the Queen Gibdo in the depths. After that, really interesting to see that the President Hudson cutout that's available in Tarrytown after entering into the storage room and moving the sign out of the way comes in at number 2 because it gives you an additional 6 damage. And that's pretty hysterical. Right after that, tied for damage, you're going to be seeing barricades, boards. Then we're going to be seeing carts. I actually didn't realize that a cart was a fan. And then when you have the Korok Frond that you would imagine would be a fan. Nice because it just sits in your inventory. Then you're going to be having any lava slabs that you create, any metal plates, any of the 3 different types of rafts that are fusible and exist in the overworld, sails, sleds, stone boxes, and 16 different types of stone shards, like the ones that are found in the Wind Dungeon. While the 8-fold long blade does have the trait of wind attacks, when it's fused on top of something else, it does not. Next is going to be a fun category called Guard Enhance. And this refers to whenever you take a shield and you put a shield onto a weapon. And that can go for things like the Hylian shield, the Sea Breeze shield, all the way down to a single pot lid or Boko shield. The pot lid actually has more durability than the Boko shield, which is weird. And if you go ahead and if you put one of these shields onto one of these weapons, anytime that you attack, you're going to be attacking with it. But if you don't have a shield equipped, when you press A, you're actually going to be doing a shield parry. And this, honestly, is not too useful for one-handed weapons like the Master Sword. However, when you have two-handed weapons, such as the claymores and the spears and things like that, and you're not able to hold a second weapon, if you are to put a Radiant Shield on there, you're now going to see that anytime that we're in our ZL stance, we're actually going to be in a defensive stance. So we can do our attacks and we could also do a shield parry. Now, just a pro tip here, anytime that you do your attack, you're actually able to cancel that animation using jump. So you could jump and then you could get into a defensive stance and then you could block like that. There's actually a lot of handiness with just doing a single one weapon for shielding and attacking. When looking at elemental ice fuses, similar to how we saw with fire, the Frost Gleeok Horn is going to be the most powerful, immediately followed by the Frost Talus Heart, as you could expect. All of Naja, all of her bits are going to be here, followed by the Lizalfo Horn. Now there's also going to be a large amount of snowballs and icicles that for the most part are very similar. There is what's coded as Drake Icicle, which I'm fairly certain anytime you're fighting a Frost Gleeok, all of the icicles that are going to be falling down, if you fuse one of those, it's actually a power of 9 ice-based weapon, which is pretty neat. Snowballs are going to be a power of 3, and that's only for large snowballs, because the small snowballs are a power of 1, so the size of the snowball actually does matter. You're also going to be finding 2 different types of ice, which refers to naturally occurring ice, and ice that you create from throwing something ice-based onto water. Likewise, almost all of these things, except for the Frost Emitter, are actually going to keep you cold in warm environments. The Frost Gleeok Horn has the code Chemical Infinite, so you're always going to be able to do ice attacks with it. However, something pretty neat here, so does a snowball. If you attach a snowball or an ice or an icicle or a piece of ice, you're going to be able to do infinite ice-based attacks, which is a fair trade-off for any time that you're not in a cold place, it's going to be actively melting. We have a neat code in here that's going to be Life Heal. And this is only done with any of the Light Dragon parts. Anytime that you put one of her bits on one of your weapons, every time that you do an attack action, you're going to be recovering a quarter of a heart, as long as that attack action makes contact with an object. Anytime that you attack an enemy, you are going to be recovering that quarter of a heart every single hit that you hit. And that doesn't only go for damaging enemies, but here I have this boulder breaker and I'm going to be smashing these boxes. Every box that I hit, I'm going to be recovering a quarter of a heart. So that's a pretty neat thing to do with this as well. However, if you go ahead and if you attach this to a spear, so because spears are able to hit things much faster, you would actually be recovering hearts significantly faster. Now getting to a fun category called Pow Hammer. Pow Hammer refers to the bouncy effect that you may have randomly picked up, like a bouncy spear or a bouncy weapon in the past. Any of the raw mushrooms or the toasted mushrooms, all of those are going to be having that effect. Octo balloons also fall into this category, but they're cool because they make a pop sound. However, the best Pow Hammer in the whole game is going to be the blue sand seal toy. So if you come to Gerudo Town, oh, I didn't realize I still had the Yiga clothing on, and I didn't realize that they would call me out on that. Wait, they threw me in jail? Okay. I did not know that was a thing. Here in Gerudo Town, if we go into Riju's room, which is going to be right above the throne room, the blue sand seal toy is the more powerful of the two. The red one here is the lesser of the two, and the green one does not give you the bouncy trait. Now you're going to see that this enemy here also has a bouncy weapon, and that's to keep me off of this platform that I have been hit off 3 times already while trying to record this clip. Bouncy is pretty darn cool. Not too useful if you want to collect the monster parts, but pretty neat to actually hit enemies off of things. This does serve a very neat purpose that if I had known this earlier, it would have come in handy. But while I was out doing all the caves for all of the Michael Bublé gems, I would have been able to put this at the end of a spear and knock the Horriblins into water, which is an instant KO for them because they can't swim. So in that sense, pretty darn handy. Now we come to a very handy category that's called Shatter. Anytime that you're going to be hitting an ore or an ore-based enemy like a stone talus, you're going to be doing 1.5 damage to that specific thing. Now when it comes to actual ore patches, you know, that drop luminous stone or regular stone or rare stones, not the ones that are on enemies and not the giant walls, those have a special code to them. They all have 40 HP, so if you have 40 damaging attack, you're going to be able to destroy it in one hit. But if your weapon has the code Shatter to it, then any one-handed or spear weapon will automatically destroy it in 2 hits. But any two-handed weapon will automatically destroy it in 1 hit, meaning that you could have the weakest two-handed weapon and you could just go ahead and put a Silver Lionel Saberhorn, or take advantage of this and grab some of the cheap stuff, including regular stone and round rocks that you're going to be seeing on the floor. Anytime that you hit it, it's instantly destroyed. The portable pot also has this code. So if you have a portable pot on a two-handed weapon, that's going to instantly one-hit KO all ore. Here we're also going to be finding all of the different mine carts, iron boxes, the hover stone, Gloom Rocks, the Blue Rock, a part of the Zora quest, barrels, the Wood Ball Golf Ball, whatever that specific object is in the world, lots of Stone Shard, any ruins that fall from Sky Islands. There are 18 different models in the game. All of those have the Shatter code as well. Iron lumps, boulders, you know, the giant rocks. And then we get to our first weapon being the Cobble Crusher. But because the Cobble Crusher only lasts for 18 hits, it's not one of the better things to actually put on your weapon. Stabilizers, and then we come to enemy horns. Like all of the Horriblin horns have the code Shatter on them, as well as Lionel Hooves, now you have something to do with those. Gloom Clubs, so in order for the Master Sword to be able to destroy ore in 1 hit, it's going to require a damage output of 40, regardless of it having Shatter. Meaning that if you put a Lionel Hoove on the Master Sword, which Lionel Hooves are going to be a dime a dozen once you start taking them down, you realize they're not used for a lot of upgrades. A Lionel Hoof on the Master Sword, it's going to be able to one-shot, or you could use that to destroy all your ore patches. Now, even though it's not pictured here, the Molduga Jaw also fits into this category as well, and conditionally has the best DPS anywhere. We're also going to see here that the 4th best is the Marbled Goma leg after redefeating Marbled Goma inside of the depths. There are 3 items in the game with the code Torch, which acts like a torch, including a torch, or fusing wood to a weapon, or grabbing the candle object that you can find in some shrines, like the one that involves the hot air balloons. Yeah, all those are torches. Similar to Shatter, we have Tree Cutter, which is only present on 5 things in the entire game. One is the sharp rocks that you're going to be finding at pretty much every single stable, and you're also going to be finding the Phoenix Toenail, bet you didn't think that was there, and the Boss Bow Goblin Horns, but not the base horn, only the 3 tiers above the base horn. Trees also have 40 damage, however, anytime that you have Tree Cutter, you're going to be doing triple damage to trees, meaning regular trees, anything made out of wood, and also Evermeans. So you only have to have a power of 14 plus Tree Cutter to take down a tree in 1 hit. So the Phoenix Toenail adds 7, grab anything of 8 damage or more, including one-handed weapons, boom, start knocking down trees. As opposed to the other elemental things, there's only a few items that have the code Water, which is going to be the most powerful being the King's Scale that you get from the King anytime that you run out of them, followed by everything else being not great, including the Water Globule. I was so excited to learn that word, the Globule. That's going to be the big floaty water things that you're going to be seeing in the 0 atmosphere places like the Water Temple. You're also going to be seeing Splash Fruit on here that destroys in 1 hit, as well as Choo Choo Jelly. That is every single item broken down into all of those categories and exactly what they're going to be doing. Now, it's very possible that I may have overlooked something or I combined things together that shouldn't have been combined. And then there's also a whole bunch of objects that just don't have a special code, but those objects themselves have unique properties. So if there's anything in particular that I missed about a specific fusible thing, leave a comment down below. If there's a bunch of them, I may just do a pinned comment with different things in there, but as far as I can tell, this is like all the real notable, helpful things. Shield surfing, slipperiness down and up. There's also long throw, but those are pretty much self-explanatory, and you're gonna figure out those items pretty easily. If there's anything I missed, leave it down below. If you've made it all the way to this far in the video, and I've covered this mechanic, and this is something that you are interested to learn, I think maybe I'm owed hitting that sub button by now. But thank you so much for being here regardless. Until next time, Austin John out.